We'll go ahead and get started. Boy, I wish we were in a little bit smaller room so that I didn't feel like I was pinned up here to the microphone to present anything, but we do want to use the computer while we're here. For those participating remotely and asynchronously, we have just a Google Doc. We thought that'd be easier actually because we can type in it as we go and you can add comments or check out some of the links that we've got in there afterwards. And we've got a tiny URL in case you want to pull it up on your tablet, or if you're participating remotely, you can pull it up and hopefully see in better resolution than you can see the screen there. Let's see, that tiny URL is right here at the bottom. goo.gl/x1 capital H, little h-e, capital E. So anyways, if you go there, you're welcome to join the presentation and click on things as we go. We'll leave that as the footer on the slide so that you can see it and join on as soon as you'd like. We ought to start out with some introductions, I guess. I'm Peter Williams. I'm the Curriculum Development Director. I got to come to BYU-Idaho in about 2007, and it's been just really exciting to see this thing growing. I see Arlen Wilcock here. I got to mention this. Arlen's one of the reasons I'm here. Because I bumped into Arlen at a conference and talked with him about the great spirit that's here at BYU-Idaho, and I felt the spirit prompting, and I think many of you can share the similar experiences that you've had being gathered to BYU-Idaho online learning and to this now BYU Pathway Worldwide effort that we're a part of. So I'll explain just a little bit more about curriculum development in a second, but I've got Tim Tanner here with me. Tim, why don't you introduce yourself as well?
So I'm Tim Tanner. I work in online curriculum development as well. I actually do graphics and media development for the courses, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that too as we progress, but that's what I do. I will say that I absolutely love BYU-Idaho.
We hope to make this more of, is it Siskel and Ebert, Tim? Is that okay. I asked him to bring his homemade banjo, but he didn't do that today. You got to hear Tim sometime. To start out with, I wanted to just mention one thing that I think is quite unique about BYU-Idaho, and it's in the curriculum development process at least. You all get to see the instruction side, and you get to interact directly with the students. You get to shepherd them, you get to teach them and inspire them, help them find that spark of I can do this and I can learn, like President Gilbert was talking about earlier today. As we work with faculty here on campus and with our online course representatives who are associated with them as we work to develop courses, I think it's quite unique actually that BYU-Idaho has what we call a course council model. And the course council model, as you know, consists of this course lead, who's a faculty here on campus, and this online course representative, who eventually represents a bunch of online instructors teaching this course. And then we have a curriculum designer from our team in that group. And they work together on the development of a course. And as we've talked about the course council model, we hope that it triggers all kinds of words that you hear sometimes in the church, like counseling with our councils, a great book by Elder Ballard and a talk by Elder Ballard. And what's unique about this council format? We've heard the phrase that the Lord scatters inspiration among us. And I believe that. We read in the New Testament Paul talking about how we are not all we're many members, but we're one body. And the eye can't say to the hand, hey, I have no need of thee. We all serve a different purpose. And the course council model of how courses are created here at BYU-Idaho is a similar approach. Sometimes it would be easier to create a course just as a one-man show. I'm not sure if you can stretch your mind far enough to think about what that might be like, but, a one-man show might be much easier, very efficient. You don't argue much with yourself. You kind of work together, you got great ideas, you make those ideas happen. But as we work in councils, sometimes it can be difficult to work together, but the Lord that is scattering inspiration among us helps us unite those ideas, round out some of the individual weaknesses that we have, see students from different perspectives, see the subject from different perspectives, and the activities from different perspectives. And so the course council model is a way at BYU-Idaho that we love, serve, and teach one another in the fabric of what we're trying to create in the courses that you then bring to life with your special powers of people, as we heard from President Eyring in one of our foundational addresses, as you bring that to the students in a very personal way. And so I hope you know that we don't just talk about loving, serving, and teaching one another as a principle for our classes, but also as a principle that we practice in the trenches, in the development of our courses and how design groups work together. So we're going to start out with a little activity. Sometimes examples are really helpful. Sometimes non-examples are really helpful. So we hope to chat about both of those today.
One of the things that we want to point out is that online learning and online teaching worldwide really is kind of something that's been around for, 10 or 12 years approximately, give or take. I'm sure there were probably people experimenting with it longer ago than that, but for the most part, it's been around, about a decade or a little bit more. If you think about other technologies that are a decade old are pretty old. If you pick out a phone that is 10 years old, you're getting an old phone, right? So a lot of times when we think of online teaching and learning technologies, we often think about things that are a little bit outdated. We want to be thinking about things that are kind of the latest, greatest things. Now, we've all probably in the last 10 years or so seen different types of discussion boards, haven't we? Some of them have probably been more successful than others, I would guess. You would probably agree with that. So can you give us a few ideas of some examples of discussion boards that have been either less effective that you've seen or feel free to share effective ones as well. Shauna?
So I teach English 106, and when we first started, we had a big discussion board. It was question discussion boards for the entire year. That was useless. And then in the last 3 semesters, they transferred it to each lesson. We have a separate questions and discussion board, and that's made a world of a difference for my students.
Okay. So you've seen a progression there, kind of an evolution, and hopefully we've all seen some evolutions in the types of discussions that we've seen. Peter's going to be keeping track of some of these on our virtual whiteboard here. Any others? Yeah, back here. Can you tell me your name and where you're from? Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then they're supposed to go and respond to one another's responses. But everyone has the exact same answers. It was dry, it was boring, the instructors were having a hard time getting engaged. And that was a big challenge. That was really ineffective.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that example. Curtis.
So the class that I was helping to teach, we went from the traditional discussion board to doing writing groups because the class was very much research-based.
Mm-hmm. So you found that instead of having a discussion board, it was more effective to have a writing group. They were kind of basically doing the same type of thing, but it was a little bit... Yeah, so the discussion board was just the tool. The activity was not really a discussion board, right? That's one of the other things that we want to point out as we continue along is that discussion boards are really just a tool. What we do with that tool can make a huge difference. Any other examples? Maybe have time for one or two others. Yeah.
I teach Book of Mormon class for my students.
Mm-hmm.
And our discussion, teachers have different feelings about them a lot of times because you never quite know what's going to go on there. And, great post about the 3 Nephites and stories of, and so I think a lot of the problems has been is that we haven't focused them on identifying principles.
Okay.
And when they can identify principles and state those principles and then expound on them, then all of a sudden, other students, it's quite easy for them to, and it becomes like the best Sunday school class you've ever been in.
Sure, because everyone's making comments.
Sometimes they're, no offense to high priest groups, but sometimes, well, I better just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Discussion board that was trying to incorporate peer review,
Uh-huh.
and it was just, there were so many steps, and it was just way too confusing for students.
So it was just complicated. The instructions were really complicated. Okay. Yeah.
I've been involved in this for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I've probably done discussion boards for 15 years.
Uh-huh.
With other schools and this. And the thing that I think two or three things are really important. One, ask lots of questions. The more students who get involved, I don't care how they're getting involved, try to relate it to the course, answer questions, ask questions, talk about work experiences, talk about relationship to the religion, family, life, and the more the students get involved, I think the more they enjoy the class. And there's so much that comes up. But the requirement is, for me often, to start things.
Sure.
Somewhere along the line to comment, and then separately reward them, maybe even more, if they've been well participate.
Excellent. Thanks. We appreciate all your examples. I think we've all seen situations where we've seen discussion boards that are basically useless, and then discussion boards that actually can be quite effective. And we want to try to push towards, what's the next generation of discussions? What's the next generation really of teach one another? We're not necessarily just talking about discussion boards, but what's the next generation of teach one another? How can we teach one another better? And that's what we're exploring here.
Okay, so we've talked about some non-examples. I want to be very explicit. These are non-examples. Sometimes we have 7 kids. When we're reading the scriptures with our kids, sometimes, you read the story of the Antichrist. We always have to kind of insert after each bad thing that they say, the bad guy said, just to make good and sure that our kids know that this is not the right doctrine. This is the bad guy's words. So anyways, those are non-examples that we heard about. We also had mixed in there a few good examples, things like taking topic discussions that were maybe not well focused and turning them into writing feedback kinds of activities and things like that. So we had a couple of good examples mixed in there. So what I wanted to ask though is if there are so many problems and so many opportunities to go amiss with teach one another, because we've seen some that are rough experiences. Why do we do teach one another then? Why is teach one another so important? So what are your thoughts there? Please, in the back, your name and where you're from too. I love that. We learn as we teach. Good.
Holy Father sent us here limited, and as we work together, we're building on each other's strengths that we've been given and perspectives.
Isn't that interesting? Heavenly Father sent us here in a teach one another kind of environment, families. I mean, see one, do one, teach one, right? However that works out. And what was your name and where are you from?
Curtis Henry here from Rexburg.
Great. Thanks. Yeah.
We can feel the Spirit more as we strive to teach one another. There's that scripture, teach one another my grace shall.
Where are you from? Jeff Taylor. Great, thanks. Jeff's pulling out of the learning model, one of my very, very favorite scriptures. I mean, it's in the scriptures too, right? Not just the learning model, but absolutely. Teach one another and my grace shall attend you. I think that is one of the key reasons that the learning model includes teach one another as this foundational principle. And we talk about teach one another, we're talking about true principles of teaching and learning in the gospel. You can find the same principles mentioned in the Seminary and Institute training manuals, in Teaching No Greater Call and Preach My Gospel, Come Follow Me. You can find these same principles. But You know, as we work together, as we serve one another, it calls down the Lord's grace to help us and to lift us. And if there's one thing that I hope that we're about as we teach students in BYU-Idaho courses, it's helping to connect people together with that sense of spiritual connection and that sense of love and service that will bring down the Lord's grace to help us. Let me read one other thing here from the learning model. This is Principle 5 in the BYU-Idaho learning model. Teaching is an essential learning component. At BYU-Idaho, students teach to learn and learn to teach. When students teach diligently, they receive deeper insight and are instructed more perfectly, as we learned about in the Doctrine and Covenants, and as this idea that we had back here. When learners and teachers view one another charitably, they create a safe learning environment where all can stretch and stumble without fear. I think that is so critical to every experience that we try and create and facilitate for Teach One Another, that students can feel that sense of safety where they can stretch and learn without fear. All learners, students, and faculty serve others through diligent preparation, cooperative effort, and teaching one another. Thus, charity replaces competition. We've heard Elder Bednar speak to an LDS instructional design group, and he said, we're going to find out where the world's going. We're going to see that. But we're going to be going 180 degrees in the opposite direction. And if you think about it in terms of teach one another and why that's so critical in a church educational experience, the world is a very competitive place. It's a very selfish place. Satan would inspire hearts that everything that you do should be about you and how you can get the very best you can individually by yourself as quick as possible, without others. But the Lord teaches us a better way, a more excellent way of lifting and serving each other. We've often heard that proverb, thee lift me and I'll lift thee and we'll ascend together, from the prophets. I love that sentiment and how we help and lift each other as we teach one another. For those participating remotely, you're welcome to click on some of the links that are there on the presentation. And it'll lead you to some more comments and summaries. It brings you to the learning model principles and also to a summary of some of the instructional design case for Teach One Another. We have different words for it in our academic vernacular with collaborative learning and cooperative learning, group learning, and other terms like that. And there's substantial study and evidence that support the strengths of teaching one another and how it helps us both to learn and to teach. So what we'd like to do, let's see. I got it. It's too many papers. All right. So what we'd like to do is introduce you to some different activity types. Now, the different activity types, they're nothing earth-shaking or new. In fact, they might seem like fairly normal and natural things as you look at them. And the purpose of defining distinct learning activities is to help us refine the uses of each one of them and get better and better at them. Continual improvement is a foundational principle for us here at BYU-Idaho in our curriculum development organization and everything we do with online. And when we articulate the specific activities, we can evaluate how they're used in hundreds of courses, in thousands and thousands of students who participate in those courses, and we can see how to improve those activities. And not just individual activities in a specific course, but how we can improve a whole type of activities across the board. But to do that, we have to have some standardization in those activities across courses, or some way of linking some of the similar strategies together so that we can learn from those together. And so what we're going to do now is look at some of those activity types. Let's see. Tim, do you want to scroll to that next sheet there?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, that one goes to that, and that one goes to that. We're going to ask him to do that in a second, too, see if we can't really confuse people. Those participating online, you can click and download those handouts right there. For those that are here with us, you can see the handouts that we've passed out. And more? Yeah, pass them over. We handed out a few extras on the benches, and if you want to, you can spread those around there. I was playing with my kids. I love to play with my kids, love to play games with my kids. Sometimes they turn out to be fights, I'll be honest, but sometimes they turn out to be really fun games. One of our favorites is a game called Cranium. I don't know, has anybody played Cranium? In Cranium, you play lots of different games that stretch your mind in different directions. And I was thinking about this Cranium. I should contrast this with another game that I've played. I don't even remember the name of this one. It's like Crazy Bunnies, Killer Bunnies. Has anybody played Killer Bunnies? Yeah, that's a Killer Bunny game. Killer Bunnies has hundreds of cards, and you read the cards, and it's like each card you pick up is a brand new game to play. And you got to read the instructions and the fine print to figure out how to play each little card. Cranium, it has several different activity types. One of them is called Star Performer, and you get to do things like, sing and act, perform for your family and friends. There's another one called Word Worm, where they have activities like the Ganillops. If you think about Ganillops really hard and twist your mind around it, you can see that it's spelled backwards. And that's exactly what you have to do with the Ganillops activity. You have to spell a word backwards without writing it down. So that's kind of a tricky thing. But as you play Cranium, very quickly, you come to recognize what the patterns are in the little games that you play. And there's variety. You're playing all different kinds of games. Sometimes you're sculpting things. Sometimes you're drawing with your eyes closed, the senseless sketch things. Sometimes you're doing these backwards spelling activities. It stretches you all different places. But very quickly, you recognize the patterns, and you just go, okay, I'm going to do a senseless sketch. Or, okay, I'm going to do Ganillops, or whatever. You know what that means, after you've read the card a time or two, or even watched as other people model for you how to do a senseless sketch. And that's exactly the kind of leverage that we hope to gain by creating some branding and some patterns around some specific activity types in our online courses. So you'll see in some of our online courses, let's see, Tim, can you click on that TOA Activity Ideas link? You'll notice we have a banner. This is what I wanted to see, Tim. Maybe zoomed in up close. There you go. By the way, the artist for all this stuff is right over here, Tim. And let's see if you can. Okay, watch. This is going to be a collaborative effort. Go up to the top, Tim, to the banner part. I'm going to press down Control on this keyboard. You try scrolling up. Let's see. Oh, that went the opposite direction of what we wanted here. Okay, there we go. Scroll up so they can see that activity banner. It's pretty far. Okay, but you see that activity banner? You'll notice those throughout your courses. Any of you seen those in your courses? Oh, not enough. Okay, we need to put some more in. Good. I'll go back to normal, and let's see. We go back here to our slides. Anyways, as we brand those activity ideas and scatter them throughout the courses, hopefully it will trigger for students, oh, I know how to play this game. We're going to do a case study. And I've had a great experience doing a case study in a past course. I didn't get it at first, but by the time we got finished with our first case study, I was starting to get the power of case study with my classmates. And next time, they're the expert, showing the novice instructor or the novice students in their class how a case study can really be leveraged to do a really good case study. Or how about something like a peer feedback activity, where you have that writing assignment, and we have a rubric, and I'm going to look at your writing assignment, and I'm going to look at that rubric, and I'm going to give you my comments and feedback, and you're going to look at mine, and we're going to give comments and feedback, and we're going to exchange. You can do that same kind of a thing in an art course. You can do that same kind of a thing in an engineering course. You might be looking at a picture of the wheelchair they made. I don't know. But you can have lots of different opportunities to do peer feedback activities of different kinds. And if students start to recognize that pattern, they get the idea of, I know how to do a good peer feedback activity and leverage this for what it can do both for me and for the other students, how we can gain and benefit from this. One of the goals that we had for our presentation was to just help disassociate the idea of teach one another equals discussion board. Discussion board is a tool that we use to accomplish lots of different activities. Teach one another activities should have instructional design purpose and have life breathed into them as you participate in them with students, right? And so we also hope to help you see the variety of activities and encourage you to help students catch the vision for what Teach One Another can do, not only for themselves, but for their classmates. So I'll give you a little example here. If you have that peer writing feedback activity and you write up your paper and you're thinking about you and your learning and you submit it, and then you get this somebody else's paper and you're looking at it and you're looking at the rubric and you're reading through it and you think to yourself, well, I've already kind of done the part that I'm going to be graded on. It's done. It's my paper. I hope they're merciful with me. I'll just be really merciful to them, give them 100% or whatever. That's one way of approaching the activity. And I'm sure we've all seen students who have that kind of a feeling about a Teach One Another activity. But if we can help inspire students, just with those little introductory comments that we make in the week or something like that, if we can help inspire students, what would happen if the Lord placed in your path as a disciple someone that you could serve today? What if you saw that person, like in the church film, that needs help bringing the garbage can up to the front of their house? Or if you found that child who had fallen over on their bike and scraped their knee, would you take the moment to stop and help them? And how would you feel after you had helped them? And what if we helped set that kind of a context for this peer feedback activity? So that the students are focused now and they're in the game, not just wearing their, I petitioned my life out, I'm in my student hat mode or whatever. We help them break down those barriers and they're seeing themselves now as disciples and with an opportunity to help lift and serve and teach somebody and point out things that they've learned or things that could help them using that rubric. That can make all the difference in the world in how a Teach One Another activity feels, in the spirit that it brings, in the connection and relationships that the students develop with each other, and in the academic learning that happens as the Lord sends His grace to help us teach one another more perfectly what He wants to help us understand and learn. Let's see. Tim, I've been chatting. We're not doing enough Siskel and Ebert here. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You want to leave that?
Okay, so each of you should have a handout of different types of activities. We don't have a ton of time, but I want you to go through that list, each of you individually, and in the area that you teach, look for, we're gonna call this try this on. It'd be like if you were going into a store and trying on a bunch of hats or something like that, okay? So I especially want you to look for the types of activities that wouldn't normally belong to your discipline. So in other words, if you guys are, I teach art, so if I'm constantly doing critiques, I'm going to pass over maybe the one that says critiques, and I'm going to try to find something like, how could I, in an art course, do a structured debate? Does that make sense? So I want you to take about, 5 minutes or so, and go through this list and read through some of those and try to pick out ones that don't necessarily fit in your discipline and see if you can kind of think of the beginnings of an activity that you could do that would be, a case study or a field experience or something like that, okay? We'll give you about 5 minutes. Okay, you probably haven't had a lot of time to come up with exact activities, but hopefully you've been able to read through them enough to kind of prime the pump a little bit. So now if you would get into groups of, say, 3 people, okay, we'll let you self-select. Get into groups of 3 people and discuss some of the thoughts that are going through your mind as far as, you know, I teach math and I have no idea how we're going to do X, Y, Z. And see if you can come up with, see if you can think outside the box, okay? Go ahead and take a few minutes to do that. Okay, we'll rein you in just a little bit then. Hopefully, you've come up with some ideas that you wouldn't have normally thought of. We do want to state, we realize that most of you are instructors, and we hope you don't feel like your opinions don't matter, because to a large degree, you guys are where the rubber hits the road. And even though we have course councils that we have designers and course leads and such that are kind of determining the curriculum, we definitely want a lot of grassroots up effort, because you guys know how things are going to run. So please, as you continue through this, share your ideas with your OCRs and course leads and et cetera, so that because your ideas are obviously going to be as great as anyone's, and again, revelation comes through all of us, from all of us. Okay, so let's just use this matrix for a few minutes and talk about, were there any ideas that happened to percolate up that were kind of things that, you know, you wouldn't have thought of? None at all. Nobody thought of anything new.
Okay, so if we start at the top with icebreaker, Rebecca here shared some fun things, and she does video notes, and then she also does a fun thing where each week in her announcement she shares like a fun fact about herself. But she's thinking she could incorporate that into like the questions and conversations, just kind of get a buzz going in their class of getting to know each other better.
Yeah, that's great. Did you say Rebecca? What do you teach, Rebecca? Okay. Okay. So Pathway Life Skills, GS 120. Other ideas? I'll let you decide how you want to fill in the matrix there, Peter. Kristen?
I've seen these before, but the peer accountability one was one that caught my eye that I think to think more about. I liked this idea of choosing someone to report to, and even if it's like someone outside of the class, having that as a structured thing. That I think there's a lot of research that shows that people meet goals if they have someone to report to.
Mm-hmm.
But then also kind of merging that with, in a presentation that I'll be involved with a couple of other designers tomorrow, one of the things we saw is that having interactions with people outside of your class, and then possibly reporting on what you learned from that to
Yeah.
your group, was associated with courses that students ranked more highly.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love that type of activity where you basically kind of do two teach one another activities. You go teach someone outside, and then you come back and report to the class about what you learned. Matt?
Yeah, so we just had the exact same conversation, just the field experience and whatnot with the cancer outfits here. Just, we've seen a lot of good, I've seen in courses that we've done, just, I think it kind of a little less, lower stakes because you're presenting to someone maybe you know.
Mm-hmm.
Getting more uptime feedback in there too, but I also think you can have a lot of rich, thoughtful conversations.
Absolutely.
Feedback of, members of the church who have conversations outside of class with their spouse who's not in the church.
Right, right. Yeah, we've specifically put activities like that into the pathway courses a lot of times, so that students are teaching someone outside the pathway group. Right here, and then Rebecca.
I was recently talking to a pathway student who said their greatest fear in their pathway experience is to make a post on a discussion board, and then that no one responds.
Mm-hmm.
And these are wonderful, but I want to be effective at helping them overcome that fear, and I'm not sure how to do that, because it's truly
Sure. There's,
intense for them.
yep,
For us, it seems like no big deal.
right. There's a lot of anxiety actually taking online courses. In fact, I've given a presentation tomorrow, and I talk more about that. Rebecca?
So there's Cranium, and I can teach the pathways. They have a lesson every assignment every week where they teach a friend.
Right.
They can choose anyone. But Tanya had a great idea that she did is have them take a selfie with the person that they're teaching, and either share that in the community or include that in the assignment. I thought what a great idea, because definitely targets the younger students, but it also like involves the person they're teaching, and then they get to share that with
Excellent. Yeah. Did anyone else have any other activity types that kind of this forced you to think outside the box a little bit? Curtis?
It's a field experience too, again, sorry.
Okay.
Just thinking about those courses where you get a lot of those comments, I don't know how this is relevant to me, this course is sort of relevant. But then having to go out and see how the content that's being taught in the course is actually used, coming back.
Mhm. Yeah, seeing that it's relevant. Did anybody think of a cool case study? Shauna.
Study, but my opinion is teach English, and so I think these are awesome ideas, but when I have a discussion board with questions already built for me, how do I can maybe post a link to a case study, but that's only going to get so many views
Mm-hmm.
versus a discussion board built around it.
Sure. So again, we hope that your ideas start to come grassroots up and make it to your course councils. We're about out of time. One of the things that all those icons and different activity types, President Gilbert actually asked us to come up with kind of a template of activity types. And I haven't had a chance to sit down and ask him why he asked us to do that, but I have a few ideas. One of the things I think he would like to see happen is that students would be able to become familiar enough with the activity types that they can jump from course to course and they can walk in and say, I've done a case study, I know how to do that, or I've done a field experience, I know how to do that, so that they're burning less cognitive load on figuring out how to do this activity, and they can use more cognitive load on just doing the activity well. So we would hope that as these ideas come through your minds, that you would kind of think along those lines as well. Do you want to tell them about the worksheet?
Yep. Just a last thought. So you have a worksheet on the back of one of those pages that allows you to just, pick an outcome that you're working on in your course or that you're particularly interested in strengthening in your course and sort of flesh out an idea that you came up with. And we'd encourage you to take the TOA challenge. This is kind of like the viral things you see on Facebook sometimes with somebody dumping the bucket of ice over their head or whatever. You can take the TOA challenge. You can do any of these things. You can watch for opportunities to point these things out to students in your courses and help them see the blessings and the benefits that can come from Teach One Another. You can evaluate the activities that you see in your course and bring up discussions. Start discussions within your teaching groups, within your course councils. Some of you are online course representatives and are directly in that course council. Others are instructors, and you could send an email and submit an idea to your online course representative for how your course might be improved somehow. Opportunities that you see to strengthen that interdependence and the real-world relevance of the activities that are in your course so that students can benefit most from them. And when you find those, coming back just for a second to this idea that was raised, so what do we do about those? Sometimes our hands are tied as instructors because the course is developed. We'd encourage you to work through the course council process to make improvements to your course over time. So if you go to the online course council's website, and you can see the URL, it's at the bottom of there on the worksheets. If you go to that website, there are lots of resources there, including more explanation about the course council process and how the improvement process works. You can see embedded in each of your courses a place where you can submit a ticket. You can submit tickets about broken things, but you can also submit tickets that are suggestions for improvement. Or you can, again, reach out to your online course representative and start a conversation with them there about how you might improve your course through an improvement project. So we appreciate so much what you do to breathe life into the activities that are designed into your courses and to help students understand what they can do to benefit most from them and help love, serve, and teach one another. So thank you very much.